Hey everyone, welcome for joining us today. What I got today for you guys is Safety and Standards from SimpliPhi Power Briggs & Stratton. My name is Daniel Moyer. I'm a sales support trainer here at SimpliPhi Power Briggs & Stratton. I also have on the line with us Chuck. Chuck's going to be kind of sitting there watching the Q&A chat and helping me if I get any of this wrong. So just a couple of housekeeping items before we get started. This webinar is being recorded, so you that are attending, and if you are somebody who's not attending but had registered for this, are going to get a recording of this sent out after we're done. Usually takes about a day for the computer to compile the video. We don't have a chat feature. We do have the Q&A open though, so if you look for the Q&A chat button, well, it's the Q&A button, not the chat. Go ahead and enter in a question there. If somebody wants to just pop in I can see you, I can hear you, Daniel, that'd be great. Tell us how you're doing this morning, just so we know that it's all working. And let's go ahead and get started. Again, today's on safety and standards. And safety is really something that we've always been foundational for us here at Briggs & Stratton SimpliPhi Power. It's something we were founded on using safer chemistry and a safer form factor. So we'll go ahead and dive into that a little bit deeper. Jose, thank you from Worcester, Mass. I remember Jose had been at one of the Alt-E store solar conferences. And so it's good to see you here today. I want to throw out here, if anybody's going to Intersolar, so Intersolar is back. Intersolar had been hosted at San Francisco at the Moscone Center for years, and they had kind of stopped for a few years. Solar Power International took over for a little bit, but Intersolar is back. It's going to be in Long Beach next week, and if anybody wants a free expo pass, I don't have free conference passes. Conference passes are the one that gets you into all the seminars and talks, but I have expo passes for free. Shoot me a link in the chat, and we'll be able to get you the code so you can go ahead and register. I know it's short notice, but if you want to come walk the show, come check out our booth and see all these stuff that I'm about to talk about in person and meet and greet, let me know, and we'll just go ahead and put that code in there for you. So again, we've been known for safety. Safety is something that's been foundational to our company. Really, we were founded back in 2010, which is kind of a long time ago in the battery energy industry history of things. But really, we were founded on cobalt-free, non-toxic lithium iron phosphate cells with no risk of thermal runaway or fire propagation. And I want to just take a moment to mention that, right? So you can have thermal runaway with a lithium iron phosphate cell. You can have thermal runaway with lead acid batteries, and we're going to talk about that here. You can have thermal runaway with cobalt, but self-propagation or unmitigated propagation is the key word there, right? You can have a thermal runaway event in a lithium iron phosphate cell, but what happens? It releases it off gases, it releases some heat, but then it self-extinguishes. It doesn't spread from cell to cell inside of battery module, or pack to pack inside a module, or even battery module to battery module. So understanding that the self-propagation or unmitigated propagation is a key word there that we're going to dive a little bit deeper into. We're going to talk about some of our UL certifications. We're also going to talk about our Department of Transportation certifications, which allows us to ship these batteries to you out in the field, and also even airship them as well. One thing I'm really excited about is to know that we're proven. Like I said, we've been around for kind of a long time in the battery game. And so we have deployed all around the world, and we have a large number of batteries out there in the field. So we've been tested and validated by the Department of Defense. And what we've always been kind of known for, and you can see them down here at the bottom, these are our battery modules here that we originally had come out with. These make great drop-in lead acid battery replacements. These batteries are inverter agnostic. So if you go to Intersolar or you go to the Alt-E show, if you had been there and you were walk around the show and you'd see Magnasign, Samlex, Midnight Solar, Outback. So all of these companies, Solarc, all of these inverters can use our batteries. As long as you get in there and adjust the set points in those pieces of equipment, get the bulk, the float, the absorb correct, get the low battery cutout voltage, the charge rates programmed properly, go ahead and use one of our batteries and drop it in there. I am excited to say that we have released our own vertically integrated energy storage system. That's the way the industry is going, and we weren't gonna not be part of that, right? So what does that mean? That means that it's our inverter, our app, and our battery. One warranty, one tech support phone call, less SKUs to keep track of, and we know that we vetted all of that equipment to work together. So going into these this new year and beyond, really selling these packaged energy storage systems is really key, right? Keep it simple for the customers, keep it simple for you installers out there, and allow you to just get the system in, get it commissioned quickly, which is what that app allows you to do, and get on to the next job. Anybody that's interested in it, we do have high voltage solutions. You can see them down there in the bottom right, containerized solutions. And so what we can do is you pour us a concrete pad, we'll go ahead and allow you to drop a 20-foot or a 40-foot container. These are microgrids, right? These are large scale systems that provide communities or some more sort of large residents, you know, the big mansions, if they really want backup, with that high voltage solutions. I'm also really excited to get down to Inner Solar and go check out that new Solarc 30K and the new Solarc 60K. These are, Solarc has done amazing things, and we have a great partnership with them. The 60K and these 30Ks is really what's going to make us have inroads into the commercial three-phase system. So if you're excited about the 30K and the 60K, stay tuned, because what we're doing is, if you paid attention to some of these spec sheets on the 30K and 60K, they're not 48-volt batteries. You know, these are 48, 24-volt batteries wired in parallel to serve our systems. That 30K and the 60K need high voltage battery banks. And we're coming out with a nice solution for you, a rack-mounted energy storage system with our lithium iron phosphate technology, our cylindrical cells, and our battery management system. So we're going to have a nice package for that to allow you to leverage that. So I'm going to kind of power through this presentation. I want to keep it short for you, make sure we have a little bit of time at the end. This is not NABCEP accredited, but we will have some more upcoming ones, so stay tuned to our training channel. Any good questions yet there, Chuck?
Yeah, we just got one from John asking if we were doing Solar Fest 2023, and I just got word back from our marketing team that SimpliPhi, Briggs & Stratton are not boothing there, but it does look like a great event. Thanks for bringing it up, John.
Yeah. Now, I'm not sure. I remember Soul Fest, which was the one down in Hopland, California, that was always happened, was at Real Goods. And I'm kind of an old school solar person that grew up, I grew up in Concord, but lived in Arcata, where, you know, I worked for Sunfrost and a lot of the old school solar, right? Solar got its foundation, solar got its start in the off-grid market. And now you can see how it's just progressed to this grid-tied industry and how big it's gotten. But I'd love to go to Solar Fest as well. One thing that's really exciting is the consolidation of the industry, and Briggs & Stratton has partnered with SimpliPhi Power. What that gives us is the name brand, right? We're partnering with a company that has over 100+ years of power innovation. There's a large company with deep pockets that's really going to drive the success of our new energy storage system. One thing I'm really excited to talk about is we have generators and we have energy storage systems, and we're experts in both of them. And I talked earlier, just a minute ago, about the off-grid industry. If anyone's familiar with the old off-grid industry, generators always played an important role in off-grid systems. And I truly think they're going to play a role in our new energy storage systems. Why would I design an oversized system for summer just to get you through the winter? No, let's leverage generators to help you get through the dark days of winter, and then you're perfectly sized for summer. So the new partnership is really exciting. I'm really looking forward to that name brand recognition that Briggs & Stratton brings to us and allows us to really set us up for a long runway for success. Talked about, we've been deployed all around the world. Really excited to see this map. we all know the problems, right? Escalating energy costs. Energy here in California is up to almost 60 cents a kilowatt hour during our time of use rates, right? We can program energy storage systems, not just our energy storage system, but any of these energy storage systems to discharge or take over the home's loads during certain times of the day when our time of use rates get really expensive. Then we can utilize solar or even charge our batteries from the grid during non-peak rate times. What's exciting is that the new IRA tax credit allows us to now leverage 30% tax credit on on storage only. It used to be I'd have to come to your house and sell you solar plus storage to leverage that 30% tax credit. Now we can come into your home, just add storage. Sorry, I keep doing that. And tell that homeowner, Mrs. and Mr. Homeowner, look, you're ready for storage. You're ready for solar. We have the storage ready. You have your backup. You do have to understand that if you have batteries only, no solar, there's no way to recharge those batteries, but we do have the ability to power your loads for a given amount of time. Failing infrastructure is definitely something that's been on a lot of people's minds. There's other failing infrastructure going on too, and I've been really surprised to see at the people are using rifles and going to shoot up these different substations, and I'm really scared, and it's really demonstrating kind of how fragile the energy storage, the electrical grid can be. We've seen the ice storms going on in the areas of Texas. Sorry about that, guys. I'm back. I would also argue that decarbonization, or the ability to help the environment, to be part of the solution, is definitely important. And it's not the reason a lot of people go storage, but it's always in the back of people's minds. And how we're going to get to these electrification of everything, how we're going to achieve some of these carbon neutral goals, is with distributed assets. It's with self-generation on our homes. It's not these centralized, large-scale power production facilities. I talked a little bit about it earlier, but I'm going to dive a little deeper. Our chemistry is really what makes it safe, right? It's lithium iron phosphate chemistry. And honestly, I see a lot of people in the industry going this direction. If they haven't already, they're going to be going that direction. A lot of people recognize the safety of that chemistry, the stability of that chemistry. The form factor is definitely important too, right? It's not just what chemistry we use, but how we put together that cell. And using prismatic cells is one way to approach it. They tend to swell and contract a little bit during the charge and discharge cycles. They also tend to have larger cells. So when there is an off-gassing event, there's just more capacity of that cell to vent. Now, pouch cells are the cheapest of all the different form factors, but they also tend to swell a little bit. They're more prone to puncture. Really, we found the cylindrical cell is what you see there on top is the most important, the safest cell.
Yeah, Daniel, I think it's really important to point out that a lot of different manufacturers are using different form factors, but cylindrical offers not only the most stability and safety, but longevity as well.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and that's really what we want to hear for our customers. Thank you, Chuck, is the ability for it to cycle repeatedly for a long period of time. That's why we're able to offer that 10-year warranty with unlimited cycles at 100% depth of discharge. If you think about it, that cylindrical cell is more expensive in the manufacturing process. It's more advanced manufacturing process where we have to wrap the cells. And I got a picture that shows that a little bit later. But it's also able to contain any thermal runaway event that might occur. And there it is, cylindrical cell. So think of these as like AA or AAA batteries that you might see in your batteries, right? In your remotes and stuff like that. I noticed one of the questions Jay is asking, is there any vehicle to home capability in the works, and there is. So one of the things, I'm going to just go back a slide here, is with our new energy storage system, this guy right up here, a lot of the hardware is already inside of this piece of equipment. And all we're waiting for is kind of the regulatory or some of the other parts and pieces to catch up with us. And we can simply push a firmware update to enable a lot of those new functionalities. What am I talking about? Vehicle to grid or vehicle to home charging. There's a little difference there. What else? Demand response systems, load shedding. So there's a lot of things in the works. We're rolling out the hardware ready to go. And then all we have to do is push automatic over-the-air firmware updates to get you going. Let's jump ahead a little bit. We have this sheet here kind of breaks down the different chemistries. I'm not going to go too deep into it, but I will say this, that cobalt-based batteries are more energy dense. And they happen to be, that's why we see them in our laptops, in our phones, in our cars, and the like. But they tend to have more potential energy for a thermal runaway event, whereas LFP chemistry is less energy dense, but it's safer. And we don't really care that much about energy density when we're talking about stationary energy storage systems, right? If I'm going to put it in your garage or put it outside, I don't care that it's that lightweight or compact because I'm not having to carry it around in my pocket or drive around town with it. One thing I'll call out here, though, is, and I'm going to mention this later, is that we're able to avoid a lot of the ancillary things that are required with cobalt-based batteries, like cooling systems, active cooling systems, safety monitoring systems, other fire deflagration strategies. So internal fire extinguishers. So it's really keeping it simple, keeping the cost down, but also just less things to fail. So really kind of quickly call out what is thermal runaway, right? It's when a battery or cell becomes hot enough that a chemical reaction begins generating more heat and then further accelerating that reaction. It causes off-gassing. It's usually that off-gassing is a flammable, it has a flammable composition, which is going to be an explosion or a fire risk. What usually causes it is a short circuit. If the battery is really abused or damaged, there's the good old nail puncture test that you see people going through where they'll puncture one of these cells with a nail. But it can also be caused by external heat sources. Anything really that can cause the temperature to get hot enough to become self-sustaining. And that goes back to what I was talking earlier, is it self-sustaining or does it kind of just put itself out? And here are the temperatures. So the kind of the point of this slide is really LFP, lithium iron phosphate chemistries can get a lot hotter before they go into that thermal runaway event, 200 degrees centigrade, whereas NMC, the cobalt-based chemistries, are around 170 degrees centigrade. And when it does go into a thermal runaway event, the chemistries in the LFP chemistries are usually a lot cooler, 400 degrees centigrade versus 675 degrees centigrade. It's also notable that there's less gas released in these LFP chemistries than versus cobalt. This is kind of a cool graph. What this is showing is on the bottom axis, we have temperature, and then on the y-axis would be the normalized heating rate. And so what we're showing you here is the different chemistries. Cobalt one is the most common cobalt. NMC is the one in red there. And what we've had to do is kind of zoom in, and what you're seeing is this chart is the thermal runaway temperatures and how hot it can get. So really, the one takeaway of this is that these LFP cells reach a much lower rate than some of these cobalt-based chemistries. And so, as you know, really what we kind of think about in the industry is there's always been a concern of safety, and we've always had cobalt batteries that are relatively small, right, in our laptops, in our phones, like I mentioned. But as we're starting to scale up energy storage across our communities, and imagine 10 years from now when every other house in our neighborhood has a large scale energy storage system, well, what we're also doing is we're scaling up that risk. So really, I think safety is going to be foundational in making the sales, making people and homeowners feel comfortable, and really making our whole communities feel comfortable when we don't have these potentially dangerous batteries all around our homes. Even if you don't have one, your neighbor might have one, or your neighboring business might have one. So that's really what the takeaway of this talk is today, is just calling out that safety. And if you're going out in the industry and you're looking at other people's batteries, look for those LFP chemistries, look for those cylindrical cell form factors, look for some of those UL listings that I'm about to mention. This is a little bit earlier, I talked about this. A lot of batteries on the market have active cooling systems with basically radiators and pumps. By eliminating those out of our batteries and have a passive cooling system, you don't need to have these active systems, which are another mode of failure. I don't know if anybody's put it in the chat, if anybody's seen a thermal runaway event in lead acid batteries. Usually it's when you're hammering on them with a large charge current and you let them run dry. So if anybody has a war story, put it in the Q&A. Let me know if you've ever experienced a thermal runaway in lead acid.
I saw that aftermath of one once. I didn't see the event, but it blew the battery in half. Basically, the top half of the battery enclosure was gone. The end user brought it into our shop and wondered if it was under warranty, and it was.
Yeah, and there's really, you know, their hydrogen is really what's going to vent out of this. A couple of questions I see, Chuck. Eric is asking, could you address the 9548 test results? You got it. I'm coming up in just a few slides. And if also, Chuck, if you want to put where they can find those test results. So that's a really, Eric is asking, is the original UL 9548 test results document available? It is. I will say that there's a little parts and pieces that have been redacted out of the thing for trade secrets, but we do publish the meat of the report on our website. And that's a really unique thing, I think, in the industry. A lot of people don't let you see the test report raw from the UL labs. We are very proud of our report because, as I'm about to go into here in a minute, it really showed that not much happened when we do this UL 9540A. And I'm going to, for those of you who don't know what that is, I'm going to explain to you what the actual test involves. So we do publish that, and we feel it's beneficial to the whole industry that people share that knowledge, because then it brings awareness to why lithium iron phosphate chemistries and cylindrical form factors and also proprietary battery management systems matter. And so let's get that link over to them and we'll take a look at that. I was kind of surprised. I don't know if anybody else noticed in the recent few days that there was some news coming out of on the kind of the mainstream news about bringing awareness to the societal impacts of cobalt mining. And there were some just awful pictures that have kind of made around the news recently. So, you know, I'm not going to say here that lithium mining or anything humans do is going to help the environment, but what are the lesser of the two evils, right? Essentially, and when we're looking to do a transition from from one kind of paradigm to another, we need these batteries, I think, really to help us get through to whatever the future may hold. And mining lithium isn't, you know, totally environmentally benign, but it's a little bit better than cobalt. And how they do it really is they pump, it's very water intensive. What they do is they pump water underground, and then they kind of put the slurry into these evaporative ponds, and then let the water evaporate into these mineral salt beds, and then they harvest what's there. So unlike cobalt, and these are older pictures, the pictures that were more recent are just awful looking pictures. It's some are mechanized, some are digging by hand. So really, if we can eliminate that supply chain of conflict minerals, And also I saw in most recent news that this says a quarter of cobalt in the DR comes from the black market. And I saw a thing that said 70% of total cobalt in the world, whether it's from these black markets or the non-black market mines, comes from the DRC. Any good questions, Chuck, or do you want to keep going?
Some are reporting no events. Others are reporting events similar to what I saw. So
For lead acid.
Lead acid batteries exploding is a thing. So you got to be careful out there, everyone.
Yeah, and I'm going to talk about PPE here in just a little bit. I'd always encourage everybody here on the call to be safe when working on these batteries, because there's always some possibility of an arc flash or a shorted out. Really, this kind of slide talks to that. That's that famous phone that wasn't allowed on airplanes just because it has such a history of catching fire. And I've always, whenever I've been going on flights, and if anybody remembers this, when they've been on a flight recently, you'll hear, they're talking about buckling your seatbelts and the air mask dropping, but they say, if you drop your phone and it falls in between the seats, don't get it. Don't recline your seat. Go get a flight attendant. And I'm like, why are they saying that? And I realize is that if you were to puncture that lithium ion battery in your phone and you're on a plane, it's bad news. So they're wanting you to go call the flight attendant to have them help you get the phone out between the seats. So if anybody's, and I had to put that together myself to realize that just how much potential energy and off-gassing come out of these batteries. And this is a small battery. Think about when we have a large system in your home or business. We do have that UN DOT 38.3, which allows you to airship these batteries. And part of getting that certificate, what they did is they took one of our batteries and kind of exposed it to situations that a battery might see when it's in the cargo hold of an airplane, right? So if you got a battery in the cargo hold of an airplane, what happens, right? Well, one, it gets the plane's on the ground. It's pretty warm. The air pressure is high, but as that airplane's up in the sky, it's low pressure and it becomes really cold. So what we're doing in these UN 38.3 tests is that we're cycling it between cold and hot temperatures. We're simulating vibration and also shock and impacts. And if the battery doesn't, vent or leak or catch fire, essentially you can achieve this 38.3 certification for air shipping. They also short it out and we overcharge it as well. So we added in the questions. Really, I'm going to break these UL certificates down. We have whole hour-long talks where we break apart just the 9540A and the 9540 test results. So if that's something you're interested in, check out our training calendar and look for some of those upcoming talks. At Intersolar, that's going to be one of the trainings I'll be giving at the booth. If you're going to stop by, check it out. Really, we're going to kind of do more of a kind of a superficial kind of view of this. UL 1642 is the UL certification on the cells, right? Those cylindrical cells that I was talking about. UL 1973 is on the battery module level. So when we take those cells and put them in series and parallel configurations and packs, and then put the packs inside a battery module or just a battery, we achieve our 1973. Finally, what we do is we go the next step to the UL 9540, which is the system level test, which would incorporate any external fire mitigation strategies that might be called out during our 9540A test protocol. So I'm going to get in a slide here, but the 9540A test is essentially when they force our batteries into a thermal runaway event and then watch with propagation and then watch what happens. And what happens dictates what the spatial requirements are, what the fire mitigation strategies are, what the deflagration radiuses are, all that are called out in the 9540A UL listing. So when you got these UL listings, some people might not care, right? What if you live off grid? and you're not having an inspector come out to the site, you're not getting a permit. Why would you want UL? Well, one is insurance. What if you had an event? The insurance adjuster might be out there looking around. What if you go to sell the property? You might need to be looking for those UL listings. But really, what we're talking about in this new world of energy storage is grid tied. And a lot of these inspectors, a lot of these AHJs that you're going to be having come out to your sites and stamp off on them are going to be looking for those UL listings. And you better have them, because you don't want to install a system. Well, they're probably not going to let you pull the permit in the first place, but you don't want to wait until inspection day when you're sitting out there with the inspector and the homeowner might be hovering over you, and they're asking for those UL certs. So if it's our batteries, if it's somebody else's, look, if it's a toaster or something you buy, look for these UL listings. The Underwriter Laboratories is there to be a third party to vet and verify the safety of all sorts of things electrical in our homes and businesses. I already broke this down a little bit. 1642 on the cell. It's similar to the UN, right? They expose it to these abusive shocks, abusive heating, impact, forced, discharge, cycling it. We repeat those tests in the 1973. And if we're able to pass, then ultimately we get our 9540A. So again, when you're talking about the 9540A, it's a test protocol that informs the parameters of battery safety and the installation conditions. So that's what allows us in our installation manual, for example, to call out closer clearances between equipment than might otherwise need to be adhered to if we were looking at, say, the NFPA reports. And really what that does is it accelerates the permitting process. So when you go to certain jurisdictions like New York, they're pretty strict on a lot of stuff. Well, we've already gone ahead and they've reviewed all of these UL certifications and given us kind of this letter of approval or stamp of approval, so that it's accelerating that permitting process. So you're not having to jump through as many hoops.
Yeah, Daniel, we got a question on that from one of the attendees about fire suppression and permitting. And exactly like you were just saying, you're going to want to defer to your AHJ. New York City might have a different standard than California or any other AHJ. So, having that 9540 information will, like Daniel said, help inform what solutions you need to get permitted in your authority having jurisdiction.
Yeah, Chuck. And I will say, when I was at the installer, we would have, we have counties, we have cities to deal with, and one AHJ might interpret that differently. So it's up to us to help educate these AHJs on the safety of these batteries. And a lot of them don't understand some of the nuances between the chemistries and bring attention to that safety. But even if we did have the UL 9540A, I've had AHJs that say, well, you gotta, of course, put in a parking bollard in a garage, or add extra drywall, fire-rated drywall in a garage, or heat detectors, not a smoke detector, but a heat detector, sprinkler systems. So if we help inform them of the differences, we can also help the future installers kind of bypass a lot of that red tape and a lot of that extra cost that might be associated with it. I've had inspectors, really almost force us to start putting batteries outside. And some homeowners don't want a parking bollard in their garage. So as I see this becoming more common, putting batteries on the outside, what's exciting about our new energy storage system is that it does have an IP65 outdoor rated battery, an outdoor rated inverter. So you can hang this stuff on the outside wall, put it right next to the meter main. So you're not having to do a big long run over to your critical loads backed up panel if that's what you're doing. I've always gotten this, recycling. I've heard a lot about recycling of solar panels, a lot about recycling of batteries. And it's an industry that's catching up. I expect to go to Intersolar next week, walk around and see a couple of companies who are wholly predicated upon recycling. And it's going to take a little catching up, but there is people out there thinking about this. There's people out there that are working on this problem. And just understand that using LFP chemistry is a little bit less risky recycling than, say, a cobalt related battery. What's this? Well, I think we're looking at a Schneider. I think this is a Schneider with the PDP on it. We got some SimpliPhi batteries down there at the end, at the bottom there. We got a charge controller with some solar on the right. Looks like we got a critical loads panel up here. We got grid tied non-backed up loads here with our grid. And we got an IS automatic generator start. So what this is kind of just talking about is don't be one of the, like me, don't be, you know just enough to be dangerous. What you want to do is know just enough not to be dangerous. So if you're in doubt, hire a professional. Let's make sure we get out our code books. I'm looking over here at my code book. Make sure we size the ampacity and voltage drop of our conductors, protect them with the proper breakers and fuses. Understand that our batteries have a C/2 discharge rate. So the rate at which you can continuously charge or discharge our batteries is a C/2, which means that if it's a 75 amp hour battery at 48 volts, that means you can charge or discharge the battery continuously at 37.5 amps at 48 volts. We do have the ability to surge higher than that at a 10-minute interval to get those other loads started. But always check those spec sheets. We got a lot of information on our documentation page on our website. One thing that I'm always really proud of is what's known as our integration guides. I talked earlier about how if we have one of our Phi or one of our amplified batteries, that you can take that battery and put it in with the Schneider, put it in with an Outback, put it in with the Solar, put it in with these other pieces of equipment. And we have integration guides that list out the order in which those settings need to be changed in the piece of equipment, right? So if you go into a Solar, well, download and print out our Solar integration guide. It's going to tell you what screen to program the float, the bulk, the absorb, the charge discharge rates. So check out our product documentation tab. We have them for Victron, a lot of different companies there. Who has put it in the Q&A, who has an insulated torque wrench, right? That torque wrench is pretty nice up in the corner. I wish I had that one. That's a digital, I believe it's insulated torque wrench. Maybe it's not. But get a torque wrench out. 160 inch-pounds is what I want to see whenever you're torquing down our battery lugs on our batteries. Don't let one of your technicians get the Makita or Milwaukee impact driver and go to town on one of these battery lugs. Get the torque wrench out. And even if you don't have an insulated torque wrench, I think I mentioned this earlier, that there are breakers on the batteries. So turn the breaker off on the battery. And even if you did happen to short out the negative and positive lugs with your non-insulated torque wrench, you're not going to get a big pop in your face because the battery is dead, the internal breaker. I like the internal breaker too. It's an extra level of safety. And also, if you ever had to do troubleshooting, you can turn off that breaker and isolate individual batteries in a battery bank, so you can start getting out your nice fluke meters down here and start metering things here and there. It says calibrated torque wrench, so make sure you take it to the shop and calibrate it. I think a lot of times you got to send that in. I personally don't own an acid resistant apron, but I would imagine that's something important, that if you're actively working on flooded lead acid batteries, right? So if you're coming out to a site and you're pulling out some lead acid batteries, you're putting in some of our batteries. Well, one, we have a great calculator on our website that tells you how many batteries that you have versus how many batteries do you need. So it'll tell you that. But go out there with your gloves, your boots, your face shield, your goggles, the spill kits. Be ready for that. And you talk about sending out one of your technicians. What does it cost you, when one of your technicians gets hurt on the job? what's that downtime? Well, that's, you got to pay somebody to sit at home. Maybe you got to pay for their medical. You're losing productivity. So let's stay safe out there. This whole point of this talk is not just safety in the products that we use, but also being safe in the way we're doing this work. And one way is having the proper PPE. There's, OSHA classes. I've had to take some of the OSHA classes. I would encourage everybody to pay your employees to take these OSHA classes, pay them to go, pay the classes for them, because these OSHA classes, they might be at your local community college or local trade school. But I honestly believe you're sending your technicians or yourself to an OSHA class, it's going to pay itself off by having less downtime. It's priceless to get hurt. There's a great Victron setup right there. I don't get paid by Victron. I get paid by Briggs & Stratton SimpliPhi Power, but I like it. I've been blown away by what Victron has done in the mobile market on these, Sprinter vans and RVs and stuff. But this slide kind of talks about, well, what do we do when we install these? Well, first, you turn the batteries off. Careful, make sure you have that insulated torque wrench so you're not going to short anything. Always check the voltage of the battery before you turn the breaker off. And make sure that the batteries have if on a 48 volt system, I want to see the batteries within 1 volt of each other. On a 24 volt system, I want to see the batteries within half a volt of each other. So that way, when you go to parallel up these batteries, you're not connecting batteries at significantly different state of charge. And this is especially true when you go to add a battery to an existing system. And that's something unique to us, not to the whole industry, but definitely something that's not as common is I can come out to your site, Mr. and Mrs. Homeowner, let me sell you a system. Maybe that homeowner doesn't have enough money to do the size system they want to get started with. Well, we can add batteries later. And usually I say about 2 to 3 years is as long as you want to go before you add batteries. But when you're adding batteries, make sure that one, you either charge up the new batteries. When we ship you batteries, they're usually at a 30% state of charge for the DOT requirements. Get them up. They may look full to you because of the voltage readings, but get them up full charge, and then add them into the battery bank so you're not seeing significant state of charge differences. Kind of the order of things is there. Really, if you're a competent installer, you should kind of know this stuff already. Always turn the loads on last. Always make sure that we get a full charge on those batteries. Even though they may appear full, they're not. When we ship them to you, they're at 30% SOC. Get a full bulk absorb charge on them, then float them down. Then go ahead and turn on your load breakers. We're going to kind of end it up here. We're going pretty fast, so if there's anything I didn't cover, let's get your questions into the Q&A chat now. We're about here to wrap it up, get everybody back to their day. If you're looking for more information, I already talked about this. We have the integration guides, the installation manuals, how-to videos, but I also want to do a quick plug for our IQ installer. If you're already installing our batteries today, email me or put it into the chat. Let's get you on board with the IQ installer program. It drives business to you because we put you on our maps. It gives you money back because we have some cash back per batteries. And check out our training calendar for upcoming trainings as well. One thing that's really exciting about Briggs & Stratton is that, like I said at the beginning of this conversation, that really, when I go to Intersolar next week, or if any of you are there, and you're going to walk that show, you're going to see so many different energy storage systems. And what it's really coming down to, in my opinion, is who's behind it. Who is the company behind this technology, behind this product, and who's going to be there for you when other people may have gone away. So when we're having those conversations with homeowners and they understand the history of Briggs & Stratton and the 100+ years that we know that who stands behind these products is going to be important. And I see the industry kind of fleshing itself out over the next 5-10 years, and who's going to be left behind are the people that have the resources to really succeed. And that's why I'm excited about Briggs & Stratton. One thing that Briggs & Stratton has is a great power academy. That's what we call our our training platform. So it's this whole website specific to training. It's got a lot of generator training. So if you're looking to adjust the timing on a generator, or do a valve adjustment, or change your oil, or whatever the case may be, you could check out the generator stuff. But we have a ton of stuff on the energy storage systems as well. And again, when you come to a homeowner site and they may say to you, look, Dan, I want, maybe this is in Florida or Texas, they say, you know, I want my 3-ton air conditioner to run all day. So by having Briggs & Stratton SimpliPhi Power together, we have now the option. We have a generator, we have energy storage system. One solution may not be the perfect fit for either one, but you can at least give them options. You may be able to get the two together to complement each other, right? Get the energy storage system to be charged by a generator and then shut the generator off. So Briggs & Stratton, I'm really excited about the future. I'm really excited about this upcoming year with our new energy storage system. Briggs & Stratton also has non-standby generators. So a lot of generators are called standby generators, right? They're meant to be run in emergencies, but we do have a line of non-emergency generators. So reach out to us. We'll connect you up with some of the more experts on the generator side, if that's something that's interesting to you. There's the IQ installer link. Everybody's going to get a copy of this presentation sent to them. So go ahead and click on that link, or just go ahead and Google it. I talked about money, right? We also have a photo contest. So I love to see photos of systems in the field. More importantly, I love to see photos of our systems installed in the field with you in the picture, or with the homeowner in the picture, or with the dog in the picture, right? It always tells much more of a story. Like, for example, this picture here, I mean, yeah, it'd be great to see some batteries on the wall, but to have the homeowners there is such a powerful picture because it tells the story. Please send us your pictures. We'll enter it into a $250 photo contest. So Chuck, what else do we got for us?
We got a couple good questions in the chat that I've been saving for the end here. Eric is specifically asking about UL 9540. Again, the UL 9540A is a test, and 9540 is the certification that is informed by that test. He's asking about gases and whether or not our enclosures are sufficient to contain the gas. You know, one of the things we've seen with the 9540 report is that even in a thermal runaway event, our batteries are not off-gassing as much as similar lithium-ion batteries on the market. You know, Daniel had that slide earlier that showed the graph where you had to zoom in 100 times to even see the heat curve from our battery. It's very similar to the off-gassing. It's the results are nominal. So, you know, whether or not you're in an enclosure or otherwise, the gas is very limited, and our report really stands up to that and shows, you know, perhaps a concerned inspector or AHJ permit, you know, department that the off-gassing is minimal, and that we're not having those kind of explosive propagation events that have been plaguing the industry.
Yeah, and that's what they do in the 9548 test. I didn't have a picture of it in this one, but they essentially wrap our battery enclosure in cheesecloth. And the idea is that the cheesecloth is a very thin, lightweight fabric that's going to discolor if there's any sort of off-gassing. So they shoved one of our batteries into this larger Boss 12 cabinet, which is a large cabinet that you can see right here in this picture, right here where my mouse is. And they forced those cells inside of a battery module to go into thermal runaway. They forced it so much that it propagated to non-heated cells, and then they let it go. And what happened is that really it didn't vent at all that significantly, and it didn't vent to the point where it caused other batteries to start venting or other cells to start venting. So the cheesecloth didn't discolor at all. So really, we weren't even, the battery module itself contained all of the gases as well. So great questions. And if you attend one of our 9548 trainings upcoming, we'll dive a little deeper into that, and I'll show you a picture of that.
Matthew asks or comments, I'm just getting into the new NFPA battery standards, and it seems to be driving batteries outside. Thoughts?
Yeah, so
Matthew.
Yeah, so the NFPA is pretty stringent, and they're saying stuff like batteries have to be 3 feet away. you can't install more than a certain number of kilowatt hours in a certain location. You got to put them outside. And so what can happen is that we can use those UL 9540A or 9540A certificates to supersede the NFPA requirements, because in the language it talks about this, that if you don't have a 9540, you have to adhere to the NFPA 855 requirements. But if I can prove with this UL certification that I am safe to do this, I am safe to do that, you can get an HJ that properly understands it and prove it to them that they don't have to adhere to this. I do have a 9540A cert. But even that being said, I think Chuck mentioned this earlier, you always have to defer to the AHJs. They all interpret it differently. And I do see that as well, driving things outside as well.
Yeah. And Matthew also asks about adding batteries and the method to achieve a full charge before connecting them.
So a couple
Matthew,
ways. Oh, go ahead, Chuck. You want to answer that one, or?
Yeah, when you're looking at a bank that's already connected to a charging source, you can bring those batteries up to a full state of charge. And, if your charging source is not in excess of what the battery can handle, which is basically, for a 3.8, it's 1.9 kW, you could also connect that new battery to that same charging source and charge it individually. But what you don't want to do is connect a single battery to, say, an Outback 8048 inverter, which can push 8 kW into a battery that can only take 1.9. In which case, if you're making a small expansion, you could use an approved external charger to get that small expansion up to the charge rate of the others. Or if you're, like I said, if your expansion bank is large enough to take the charge source available, you could disconnect the old bank or turn the breakers off the old bank and charge the new bank through that charge source. Just being really careful not to exceed that maximum charge rate.
Yeah, which is that C/2 rate. What about this, Chuck? I always thought about this. What if you have, so say I ship you some batteries, they're at, say, 51 volts, and the batteries you got in your system currently are floating at 54 volts. Could we not discharge the existing batteries down to an acceptable level? Remember I said within 1 volt, so we discharge the new batteries down to 52, turn off any charge cycles, and then incorporate the old batteries. So rather than charging up the new batteries, you're discharging the old batteries and then marrying them. I'm not sure. It seems like it would work.
That would work. Yeah.
Great. Somebody's asking, as a Canadian distributor, is their product certified as CSA? Let me be a little clear. We do have CSA listings on the older Boss 12, Boss 6 cabinets with paired with a Solar, but we do not have the Canadian standards on our new vertically integrated inverter yet. It's coming down the road. It's really close on that. Let's see. Can we have more number of cycles with less DOD? Yes, you can. So what I mentioned before is that we warranty our batteries for 100% depth of discharge at unlimited cycles for 10 years, right? No warranty based on megawatt hour throughputs, no warranty saying a certain number of cycles, no warranty on a certain depth of discharge. Let you go to 100. That being said, if you discharge the battery down to an 80% DOD, we expect you to get 10,000 cycles out of that. So there's certain situations where sizing for 100% DOD is perfectly acceptable. What if it's a backup only and the battery's just kind of sitting there all the time? Well, go ahead and size the system for 100% DOD. But if you got an off-grid, you got somebody doing load shedding, you got something where the battery is being cycled daily, go ahead and size the system for an 80% DOD, right? Probably need to add another battery or two. That way you're kind of shallow cycling the batteries and you're getting a lot more life out of them. Somebody's asking, is 9540 and 9540A the same? They are not. They are related. What 9540A does is it takes your battery energy storage system, complete with any sort of ancillary things, parts and pieces you might need, like a fire suppression or other mitigation strategies, into the UL labs. They force your batteries into thermal runaway with propagation, and then they watch what happens. What happens, in our case, not much. It kind of put itself out. But what happens in other people is that they get this explosion, they get this fire. What that means is that they use those results in the 9548 test to determine what your UL 9540 certification means. And in the UL 9540 the certification is going to talk to stuff about clearances between flammable walls, clearances between battery cabinets, different sort of mitigation strategies. So they're related, but not the same. Anything else? Good questions, everybody. Keep them coming.
Advising that 20 kilowatt hour standard. One of the things we like to point out is that our new ESS has a 4.9 kilowatt hour battery, which is great because you could stack 4 of them and be just under that 20 kilowatt hour limit, which we are seeing some AHJs implement.
Yeah, that's right. So Los Angeles, for example, Los Angeles County, they don't care NFPA, or they have their own standards, and they're saying 20 kilowatt hours. So what can happen, though, Matthew, who asked the question about 20 kilowatt hours through the NFPA, is that certain jurisdictions will allow you to exceed that. And there was a great SIA Solar Energy International Association did a great webinar on this, talking about how using your UL certifications that you can supersede some of the requirements from NFPA 855, although you still have to adhere to some of those.
What is the duration of the SOC calibration of a battery energy storage system should be? So I think it's going to really depend on the equipment. Some SOC calculations are ongoing. Others are based on the capacity that you put in, and maybe that SOC recalibrates when you change capacity. So, for this question, I would definitely defer to the equipment that you're using. It's going to vary from brand to brand.
Yep. Eric's asking, he's asking about cold weather temperatures on our new energy storage system. And I just said earlier that I see more energy storage systems going outside. And as energy storage systems become more popular in our country, in states that historically haven't had a lot of energy storage systems, northern states like New England, Minnesotas, the Montanas, the Michigans, we're going to see batteries going outside. And if it's important to understand that lithium ion batteries of any chemistry, of any technology, can't be charged below freezing. You'll damage them. So what we need are cold weather mitigation strategies. And we actually have talks where we spend the whole hour just talking about cold weather mitigation strategies. And part of that, if you're going to be doing something like that, we can take one of our boss cabinets and in the factory incorporate some heating pads, and the heating pads can heat the batteries. Internal to the batteries, they have internal 10K thermistors. So they have thermostats inside each of the batteries, measuring the battery's internal temperature, which is important to understand. And we talk about this in these other trainings, the temperature gradient between internal to the battery to, say, the battery cabinet, or even outside ambient temperatures aren't always the same. So to make the long story short, we definitely have a lot of cold weather mitigation strategies, ways to accomplish that. Heating pads, the ability for the battery to tell an inverter charger that it's too cold, either slow down my charge rate or stop charging me completely. So great ones. Somebody's asking about a fire suppression system. We don't need a fire suppression system because we were able to show in our 9540A test results that we didn't have flames shooting out of our energy storage system cabinet. So definitely not something I'm that familiar on. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Chuck, for being here. We're going to let everyone back to the end of their day. If somebody's going to Intersolar, please email training@simpliphipower.com. If you need a free pass, let us know. Otherwise, you guys, everyone have a good rest of your day, and we'll see you soon. Thank you.